Now we're going to talk about the description of the moon from Brihat Parashara. But before I mention that, Srishti just mentioned another aspect of the short hair. And that is, there's an idea that hairs are our thoughts, because they come out of our head the same way that our thoughts do. So they're a symbol of our thoughts. And the sun with short hair or less hair, he doesn't get wrapped up in all of his extraneous, uncontrollable, meaningless thoughts. You know, you get wrapped up in all these crazy ideas and stuff. And you'll find people who have strong suns, they tend to be like more stoic people in general. They're not talking about all this extraneous nonsense. Where you get people with afflicted suns, and there's billions of nonsensical thoughts. By nonsensical, I mean non-pertinent to what's happening thoughts going on in their head. So you can go doing with them, and the entire time, all these thoughts will be coming to their surface, and oftentimes they'll be communicating them. Those will be rattling on, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da, giving all this attention to thoughts, but in all this energy on thoughts that really aren't important to anything that they're doing or anywhere they're going. Okay? And also the worries of life, getting caught up in all those possible worries. The sun sticks to what's real, what's concrete, what's there. And that's what he focuses attention on, not all those other extraneous thoughts that can just be so uncontrollable. Okay? So that's another part of that solar quality. Okay? But now on to the much more fun moon. So, the description of the moon is, abounding in Vata and Kapha, and filled with knowing is the moon of round body, O twice born, auspiciously eyed, of sweet speech, fluctuating, and lovesick. So this is a really interesting description. So this is the description of feminine energy, of the female halves of our psyche, and the dominant energy in people born with a female body. Where should I start? I think my favorite thing about the moon is that it's filled with knowing. And that's just one of the most remarkable things about the moon. The sun is intelligent. Well, intelligence is a pain in the ass. You got to think things through, get the information, make sense of things. All knowing is you look at something and you just know the answer. You know? And you see that a lot when it comes to the way men and women tend to shop. So men will sit there and they want to buy a car. They're going to get back issues of Road and Track and read all the car reviews, study the gas mileage, the horsepower, read the consumer reviews, check the price, do these complex mathematical calculations of how much more gas mileage they're going to get on the diesel versus the non-diesel, and the fact that the diesel motor costs $5,000 more, and is it worth it, and no, it is or isn't, how much are they going to drive in the next 10 years, is that warranty worth it? They're going to do all these amazing feats of mind to come up with what the best car is, and then they're going to go get that damn car. They're going to test drive it. They're going to say, if this car, I like how it drives, I'm going to get it. Well, a woman, she don't do that. She goes to the parking lot, and she walks to the parking lot, and she goes, I want that one. And her husband's like, but this one, I want that one. And then she gets that car. And that car saves her life one day. If she got in the car her husband is, 10 years, 5 years later, her husband says, if I'd got that little car I wanted her to get, she would have been dead now. She just knew, I want that one. That's the one that's right for me. So the part of us that defies rationale, that defies logic, that defies common sense, that defies a good decision, that just says, yes, that's what's right, that's our moon. And women tend to do this more than men do. Men, we have a hard time, our brain gets in the way. I remember shortly after I got married, I went down and I bought a Mercedes, a used Mercedes. And I loved the car, it was awesome. It was like a 79 Mercedes, and that was in like 99, so it was only 20 years old. It was an awesome vintage car. I'm so happy I found that thing, and I drove it home. Srishti comes out. She takes one look at the car, and her whole face falls. She's like, what is that? She couldn't go car shopping with me regretfully, because she just had our first son, and we didn't have a car big enough to fit him. We had a little two-seater sports car, and so we couldn't get the baby seat in. So that's why I was car shopping in the first place. She sees this car, she goes, what is that? I'm like, what the hell do you mean? This is a top-of-the-line 79 Mercedes diesel. It's like 30 miles an hour. It has turbo. It's totally comfortable. It's like perfect looking. It's totally awesome. And she wasn't convinced. Well, 2 weeks later, that thing is blowing so much blue smoke, I'm pulling the whole motor out. And basically, that car never worked. It just decided to die. It was like the worst car I've ever bought in my entire life. So we had to replace it. So we found a 74 Mercedes. A lower, the second from the top, old 74 Mercedes diesel. And we went and we drove and she loved it. This thing was filled with hay and cat and dog hair. It had spots on the roof from having surfboards on it. It had some oxidation, had some pine sap on it. She looked at that car and she loved it. And it was like the only car we had the money to buy. We bought that car. We drove the shit out of that car. And then we gave that car to my brother and he drove it all around the United States looking for a place to live. And then he gave it back to me and then we drove it. And then somebody crashed into it in a parking lot and we didn't want to fix it because it was really old and we sold it and we still got $600 for it and the guy was so happy to find it. And ironically, he had a 2-seater Mercedes diesel and he just had a baby and needed a 4-seater. So he was so happy to get this old car. So, and when you looked at the car, the first one was a lot prettier. It was like, wow, beautiful car. This other one was like, it's kind of neat and funky, but it got spots on it. We spent a whole day cleaning it. We had to gut it to get all the dog hair and hay and straw out of it. She used to haul hay in this thing and go surfing, the person we bought it from. But it was such a fun car that we bought one like that a year ago just for the fun of it that we drive around now. Okay? Because we miss that car. We always go, oh, we miss our old 74 Mercedes. So women can do that. They have this all-knowing quality more than men. And I always tell guys, if your woman got a good moon, when she says something, just listen, all right? Or you're going to regret it. And every time I haven't listened to Chastity, I've regretted it, I think, most certainly. Now, that's if they have a good moon. On the other hand, you get a woman with afflicted moon, or a person with afflicted moon, their mind's full of worries, and they're always saying negative things that you don't know which ones are true and which aren't, okay? But in a person who's got a solid moon, when they just go, that's the one, yes or no, that's right, that's wrong, that's a yes, that's a no, they just know. And it's the feminine energy that guides us in that. We can't always take the time to make decisions, can we? Lots of times we just have to know. We have to say yes or no, right then and there. It's the moon that gives us the right yes or no. People with good moons, they just know, say yes, or they just know, say no. Without even having to rationalize it, look up information, any further conversation. The moon gives that magical quality. It's one of the most powerful things of the moon. And you'll find that the people who have that moon who can do that, they tend to be more silent people. They're not going to be chatterboxes of extraneous random thoughts going all around the universe of their minds with all kinds of shit coming out of their mouths. No. It's usually going to be the people who don't say a lot. But when they say it, even if it makes no sense, it's right. That's a sign of a good solid moon. Okay? Alright, and it says here the moon is of sweet speech. That doesn't mean she's a chatterbox. Okay? It does say moon is a chatterbox of sweetness. Okay? It says sweet speech. When the moon says something, it always says it nicely. So when I brought that first Mercedes home, it wasn't like Chastity saw it and said, "What the fuck is that? Are you crazy?" She just said, "What is that?" Like she said it really sweetly and her whole face fell. The moon is always going to be sweet. If somebody says something out of what they say is their intuition or all-knowing and it comes out non-sweetly, it's not. That's coming out of their egos and fears and worries and concerns and frustrations. Completely different thing. Okay? So the moons have sweet speech. It has the natural sweetness that comes out in what it says. It doesn't have stress speech, anxious speech, conscious speech, neurotic speech. Those are all signs of a damaged moon, a hurting feminine side. It doesn't have negative speech. Okay? It says nice things. It sees nice things. It relates to nice things. It speaks nicely to others, and also it appreciates being spoken to nicely. And it takes a lot to push the moon into a place where it speaks unsweetly. It takes a lot of abuse before the moon starts speaking unsweetly. By its nature, that moon, that feminine side, is always sweet in its presentation of itself. And the most important presentation of ourselves is not our makeup, it's actually our speech. And that's where the moon presents itself at its best. So one of the reasons you'll fall in love or care or like having a person with a good moon around is because of how they present themselves verbally. Okay? And one of the reasons you'll go crazy having somebody around with an afflicted moon or afflicted female side is because of how they present themselves verbally. It won't be sweet at all. Okay? Alright, so that's one of the important qualities of the moon as well. The moon is auspiciously eyed. Well, the moon sees the good in things. That's the natural quality of the moon. The beauty and joy of a person naturally allows a person to see the beauty and joy of the things around them. And that's a sign of a good moon. If we have a good moon, we have a good, healthy, feminine side, we feel good about ourselves. We see ourselves as beautiful, wondrous beings. And so those are the things we see in the world. We see things through that lens. If the moon's in bad shape, though, then our feminine sides are hurting, unit that feels undeserving, worthless, distasteful, disgusting. And so everything it looks at, it's going to see it that way. We very much see the world in the context of how we feel about ourselves. Our self-image, how we feel about ourselves, is the moon. And that's how we're going to see the world. Okay? The moon by itself is auspiciously eyed. She's healthy and she sees the beauty in life because she sees the beauty in herself. And so what she sees is good. Okay? Okay, the moon has a round body. Well, she literally will. Physically, people with the moon in the ascendant card or the moon with the ascendant lord card, they tend to be a little more rounded. You'll notice their shoulders are a little more round. They'll be a little more curvy. If they're men, they'll just kind of have a little more narrow, round shoulders. If they're women, they'll also have a little more rounded shoulders, but also usually be more curvy in other places, or all places, I guess is the right word for that. And so the moon is round. Psychologically, that means the moon is adaptable. She's not a watermelon in Japan that's going to, stay there. She's a round watermelon, and she's going to roll wherever she needs to. Now, it's important to be able to change directions in life. It's important to make adjustments. It's our feminine side that helps us make adjustments and change direction and change our plans and change our mind. As required, meaning as the environment requires this, the moon adapts. And that's an important part. We have to be able to adapt. If you get a person with just a strong sun and they say, this is what I'm going to do, and they just go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and they never adapt along the way, they won't be successful. General Lee had a fantastic moon, if I remember right. I have to go look at his chart to double check. I remember him having a really good moon. Well, first rule they learn in military school is, whatever your battle plan, it's not going to work. Something's going to change, and you have to be able to adapt to that plan and still win. So here General Lee was one of the greatest general in the Civil War, one of the greatest generals in history, according to many people. He was able to adapt to the situations that the environment brought to them. It's our moon female side that allows us to make those adaptations necessary to have a good life. So if we're in a relationship with someone, we constantly have to adapt, don't we? Like for instance, we have dinner plans, but their car breaks down. Now we have to adapt, right? Person with a good moon adapts to that, and they still can have a nice day. A person with a bad moon can't adapt to that. Can't make that adjustment. Feels hurt by that. Oh, you don't love me, therefore your car broke down. It's like, what? No, I bought a 79 Mercedes. That's why the car broke down. Has nothing to do with how I love you. But people with troubled moons, their feminine side can't adapt. Okay? When it's required to adapt by the world, it takes that personally, it resists it, it struggles against it, or experiences fear and stress and worry on account of it. And struggles and suffers, and they can't adapt to the needs of a relationship either. And the thing I think that's most, in a man's chart, when he has a troubled moon, and he loses that roundness of his body, of the round body, he loses his ability to adapt. it makes him have a really hard time adapting to the needs of the woman. Okay? And then he'll oftentimes hurt the woman a lot on accident, not on purpose, but simply because he's not able to adapt in accordance with the needs of the woman. Women so much more readily adapt, but it's important that men adapt too. Now, in a relationship, women tend to need more change than men do because the moon has a round body. They need to see different scenery more often than your average man does. Okay? They need to experience different things. They need to shift and adjust more than a lot of men. Men get stuck in that rut so much more easily, especially if they have a bad moon. So if you have a man who doesn't have a good moon, he's going to have a hard time partnering up with his girl when she is just naturally being her adaptive, changeable self, which is just something women are more. And of course, the moon is so much about adapting and changing. We can just see that in the cycle of the moon. Sun comes up every day, every 24 hours, plus or minus a few hours for DST and stuff. Whereas the moon, one day it comes up, big and bright. 2 weeks later, it comes up like a thin sliver that you can hardly see, and the day before that, you couldn't see it at all. It's always changing. It's always changing. And women do that. As during the month, women's hormones change dramatically. And so women's moods will change dramatically. Their body weight can change and fluctuate over that period. Biologically, they're going through huge changes throughout a month. And men have to adapt to that if they want to have a good relationship with a woman, because they will literally feel different, just physically, from a physical level. When they're purifying a lot of toxins and having a tough period, they're going to feel different. So that's just part of a moon-dominated body. A moon-dominated biology is change, more need for change as well. But also the moon, the female side, is what gives us all that ability to adapt and change. Like General Lee, change the battle plans, change the strategy, change the desire. Based on what the possibilities are, which are constantly in flux and motion, we have to adapt to them. Because of this, it's the moon that rules evolution. Now, evolution is symbolized in the zodiac by the sign Cancer, which is a crab. So the crab has finally crawled out of the water. He can live in the water, but he's crawled out of the water, he can live on land. So the crab symbolizes the fact that life has crawled out of the water and evolved out of the water onto land. Okay? And the crab symbolizes that huge critical step in evolution between water breathing and air breathing, which is the hugest step in evolution, isn't it? Are you an air breather or are you a water breather? That's like the big differences, right? The biggest difference in the world between different species, isn't it? Because one of them has to be in water, it'll die, and the other one has to be in air, it'll die. But yet they both eat the same types of food. They'll both eat breadcrumbs, for instance. Birds eat breadcrumbs, fish eat breadcrumbs. If you put a bird underwater, it dies. You put the fish on land, it dies. That's the critical thing, is what do we breathe? So Cancer is a symbol of an animal at that critical junction that has evolved out of the water onto land, but is not so evolved that it cannot also breathe underwater. So it's pretty awesome. So the moon rules that evolution. Evolution is simply adapting to the needs of the environment. And that's an important thing of the moon. People with healthy moons adapt to the need of the environment. People with women adapt, if they have good moons, adapt more readily to the needs of the environment. All right? So you'll see, like in fashion, women are just much more inclined to go to another country and start wearing the fashions of that country, right? Whereas men, they're stoically walking around in their strange, out-of-fashion clothing from another culture, more likely. Okay? One thing I want to say about that, adaptation. Okay, I just forgot it. Hopefully it'll pump back into my head. Okay, but it's fluctuating, as I mentioned. And that fluctuating has to do with the round body. The round thing can be blown by the a round object can be blown by the wind and move across the yard. You know, like we get balls flying around here. The kid leaves a ball out, the wind comes and it blows, right? And round things change direction based on pressures, external pressures. So when there's an external pressure against us, or when somebody says something different, it's our moon that listens to it and decides how to react to it. It's important to be able to react to external pressures, because it doesn't mean we have to go in the direction those pressures are necessarily pushing us, but it shows there's a necessity for change. Otherwise, there's going to be conflict. In a man, that adaptability, that ability to shift direction, that round things allow, is in a relationship, it means when the woman has her input, he's able to hear it and adapt his direction, which means when her all-knowingness kicks in and she goes, we have to do this, even though that wasn't his plan, he's able to adapt and shift. A man with a damaged moon, therefore a damaged female side, when his woman gets that all-knowing yes or no, we have to do it this way, he won't be able to hear it. And he'll just mow over her and run them both into regret. So he loses one of the best assets of having a female partner. He loses her all-knowing moon, which is usually going to be on more than any man's. And his moon is actually, a man's moon can be so shot down that he literally doesn't even listen to the all-knowing moon of his woman. And that can cause a lot of problems. Because one of the best things about girls is listening to that all-knowingness when it presents itself. Okay? It's interesting, in the Hindu mythologies, they have these Brahmins walking around and they get angry sometimes. And their pride gets wounded or something, they get angry and they'll actually curse people. And there's one such story, there's a few stories like this, but there's one story where the Brahmin, somebody does something to the Brahmin curses him. And then there's a chaste woman, the story says, there's a chaste woman nearby heard that, and she says, if I've been a chaste woman, the curse will have no effect. And as it turns out, the curse has no effect. And that's huge, because when a Brahmin, in Hindu mythology, when a Brahmin, a priestly person, curses somebody, not even God can make the curse go away. So the person prays to God and God shows up and says, what's wrong? He says, so-and-so Brahmin priest guy cursed me. God says, well, I can't erase the curse, but I can modify it a little bit. I can adjust it, but he can't erase it. And here's this chaste woman who says, if I've been chaste, that curse will not come true. It won't happen. And it doesn't happen. So the question is she so powerful that it doesn't happen? No, not at all. There's no power in the moon. It just knows. All the power is in the sun. The Brahmin person, the spiritualized person who cursed this guy, all the power is there. But by her saying, no, this curse isn't going to happen, those words came out of her mouth because that's just the simple truth. It's not because she didn't want the curse to happen. It's not because she had the power to subvert the curse. It's just she knew within herself that that curse wasn't going to happen, therefore it doesn't happen. It was that all-knowingness. It doesn't say all-powerful, right? It just says all-knowing. And there's no power in Vata and Kapha. Power comes from Pitta, which is the sun, from fire. Fire has the power, you know. The whole world is created by fire. And there's another story from the Ramayana where Sita gets abducted by this demon king. And she's Lord Rama's wife. And he puts her, kidnaps her and wants her to be his wife. And he already has a couple hundred, but he wants her to be his main wife, his empress, to rule the world with him. And any woman would just be so happy to have this guy in general. But Sita's like, back off, Rama, or Ravana. I'm not interested in you at all. I got Lord Rama, and you don't even compare to him. So he got so angry at her. And well, first she wouldn't even come in his house, and she just sat outside underneath this tree for months while her husband was trying to find her. So one time, Ravana got so mad at her, he draws his sword and he rushes towards her to kill her. He goes, I'm going to kill you for being this way, and he wants to slash her down. And she just plucks a blade of grass out of the ground, and she says, if I've been a chaste woman, you can't cross this blade of grass. And she lays the blade of grass down, and Ravana stops right there. Well, the most powerful dude in the world, practically, Ravana, is not going to get stopped by a blade of grass laying on the ground. There's just no way, right? But he stops. Why? Because she said that because of the fact that she just knew it was true. She knew that she was in no danger, that he was not going to kill her. She just knew it from within herself. And that's why she just was prompted to do that. So the all-knowingness of the moon is not something that's planned. It's just a truth that comes out from within the person. It's just the way it is. There's no refuting it. There's no power that can go against the way things will be. Okay? So that's that attunement to what God is really making happiness, what that all-knowing is. And in these stories, they always say, I've been a good wife or a chaste woman. Well, that doesn't mean they never had sex before marriage. And hell, that doesn't even mean they're not going to divorce their husbands and have sex with 100 guys after that and have a good wild time. Chastity is really the knowingness of women to know what's good for them, to know in their hearts what's right. Okay, it's basically chastity is being in touch with the first feeling of their heart. So when they say, if I've been a chaste woman, this curse won't hold, they say, if I'm really listening to the first feeling of my heart, that curse isn't going to happen. And Sita's like, if I'm really listening to the first feeling of my heart, you're not really going to cut my head off today. Okay? But if I'm listening to the second, third, fourth, or fifth feeling, I'm wrong. That means they've been unchaste. So chastity is the ability to know what's in our hearts at any given moment. The first feeling. Being unchaste is acting upon the second and third feelings of our heart. Okay, so for instance, let's say that a guy promises his girl that he's going to pick her up at 6 o'clock to take her out. But, he bumps into an old friend he hasn't seen in 20 years, and he hangs out with him, and all of a sudden he lost track of time, he shows up at 8 o'clock. During those 2 hours, and he doesn't even call her because he loses track of time. He doesn't realize that much time has passed. So he comes home and she's there. And during those 2 hours, she was feeling first worried that he wasn't there. Worried that the person she loved did not come home. And didn't come to pick her up at 6. Then she also started feeling a little lonely. Maybe she felt unloved because he wasn't there when promised. So she's feeling a combination of worry and unloved. Then that's her first feeling. Then he comes, she opens up the door, and she just starts yelling at him, where the fuck were you? You're supposed to be here. You're such an idiot. What's wrong with you? Oh, you lost track of time. What kind of fool? You can't look at your phone. You're just an idiot. So she's venting all this anger at him. That's her second feeling. The first feeling was, I was sad that I was alone, and I was worried, which was even worse. But she doesn't show and act upon those first feelings. She's being unchaste. She shows anger and frustration. Okay? A chaste woman, when that guy showed up, she'd go, oh, I was so worried for you. I missed you so much. What happened? Those would be the words that came out of her mouth. And why is she able to say that? Because she feels good enough about herself that she, in her own mind, believes that that guy is doing everything possible to come to her. And that for him to not be there, something really had to happen. She firmly believes that. Okay? Whereas the unchaste woman, the woman who acts on her second feeling, and yells at him, why are you late? Obviously you don't even love me. She's saying those angry, negative things because her deep down inside is, no one loves me, I'm not good enough to be loved. So obviously him not being here is because he doesn't love me. See, it's a projection of their own negative feelings about themselves. Well, some person that feels good about themselves knows that their partner is doing everything they can to be with them. So chastity is the ability to feel good about yourself, to have a healthy self-image. And now that healthy self-image, listen to the first feeling of your heart. not the second or third feelings. Women ruin their relationships when they listen to and act upon the second and third feelings of their heart. That's why the moon and the moon card are the most important things in a woman's birth spread. And men, if they don't listen to the first feelings of the heart, they're going to cause themselves and their women some problems too. But not to the degree that a woman will. A woman who can't listen to the first feelings and can't act upon her first feelings is a train wreck in her love life. Okay, it's the most single important thing that a woman does. And for the sun, that consistent, square, masculine side, for the men, the most important thing to have a good relationship is consistency and stability and sticking to what they've said they've done. Okay? And thinking things through long-term wise. Okay, and we'll talk about all that stuff more when we talk about more male-female differences and the afflictions to these things. So that's what chastity is. And that's really important because soon we're going to have a whole class, maybe more than one, on, okay, is this woman chaste? Meaning, does this woman listen to her first feeling? Or does she act upon her second, third, fourth feelings? In which case, her relationships will be in trouble. Okay. And also, the most important thing really about chastity, listening to the first feeling. Every woman knows the minute a man shows up in her life, whether she should pick him or not. She just knows it. Because she's all-knowing, right? Woman, moon is all-knowing. But does she listen to that first feeling? You know, I have women come in all the time who've had a bad relationship. I said, you knew right away that he was wrong for you. She goes, I know. They always know. You know, they're like, I know. But then they didn't listen to that all-knowing. They thought, because that all-knowing was overrode that nobody loves me, but here's somebody who's actually looking at me. You know? Or, I'm just so miserable, I'll take anything. I don't care if it's good for me. There's these negative feelings about themselves that override that first feeling. They even let them get involved in a bad relationship in the first place. Women with great moons don't find themselves in bad relationships because their all-knowingness right away is like, oh, he's not right for me. That's not the right car. You know? They don't need to get to know the guy. Not when that moon's working. They just know. Okay? So it's important to listen to that all-knowingness of the moon. It's really one of the most remarkable things of our female side. And the female side's stronger in women. Men, we have this too. But usually we're spending more time in our suns and thinking more than we need to so that we don't listen to the moon all the time. But it's more important for a man to listen to his woman's moon than his own moon. And a man with a good moon listens to his woman's moon. A man with a troubled moon doesn't listen to his woman's moon. Because a man with a troubled moon doesn't like his feminine side, which means when it comes right down to it, he doesn't really like women either. Okay? He likes some things about them, like the fact that they're sexy and hot. You know, that's one of the best things, and they cook good. But they don't really like the way women are. Adaptable, changeable, knowing things without having studied, you know. All these things that women do. Men with bad moons don't like it. Okay? So you don't want a man with a bad moon. If you have a man with a bad moon, he's got lots of scar tissue on his feminine side, which means when he looks at you, he's going to see all that scar tissue. And there's no way you can be happy when somebody's looking at you through a lot of emotional scar tissue. Okay. Even though in other parts of his life he might be an amazing person, if there's parts within him that have a scarred feminine side, he'll project that onto his woman. And as a result, not be able to have the best possible relationship. So now that you're learning a little bit how relationships work and how complex the male and female systems are and how many things they deal with, you can really see why it's just so hard to have a good relationship, can you? You know, you have to be like a friggin' saint to have a good relationship, right? Okay. Okay, the moon is abounding in Vata and Kapha. Well, Kapha gives the softness and the curves. Vata gives slender. Kapha makes woman devoted. Vata helps them move towards what they love. So women are always moving towards what they love. So they are receptive, which is Kapha, but then they have this Vata quality that always makes them want to somehow kind of float closer to what they love, to drift closer to what they love and what they need. And that's the quality of Vata. So they very much move towards what they love, they move towards what they're devoted to. And Vata is really an element of change. It has to do with wind. The wind is changeable, right? And Vata gives that changing quality to the moon. And women adapt and change in order to get their kapha met, to have their needs met, to get their hearts filled. Okay? The very quality of women always wanting to change their bodies, wear different clothes, get different hair, do a different makeup. Those are all parts of the desire, the natural ability of women to adapt and evolve and change to get their needs met. That's a healthy quality. But it's not healthy, of course, if it's taken to an extreme. And lots of times we see women like, say, Pamela Anderson, who evolved and adapted her body to practically a point of ruination. Okay, that's only going to be there when there's some afflictions to this and where the Vata gets extreme and the person changes themselves too much. But healthy change is, healthy moon gives healthy change, healthy adaptability. Okay? If a moon's afflicted in a woman's chart, a lot of times they won't use that ability for change, that movement of wind in their lives. They may take it to an extreme, but they also might just not use it, which means they'll be really stubborn. And they'll just be stuck on some point or stuck on some way. Stubbornness is not a good quality, right? If we have if any person, male or female, has an afflicted moon, then they can lose that Vata quality of their feminine side, that changing, movable quality of their feminine side, which means they get stubborn. They don't listen to reason. They're not open to another suggestion. Don't just hate a person. You have to shake them to get them to listen. You're like, gosh, if they just listen, their life would be so much better. But they're just stubborn to their own detriment. That's a sign of a bad moon, where they can't see how a change, Vata, would allow them to fulfill a need, which is kapha. Okay? Sometimes a little change is what it takes. A little change of perspective, trying something a little different, things like that. But they'll just stubbornly plod on to their own detriment sometimes. Men and women both do that if they have afflicted moons. Then the moon is lovesick. So here we've seen all these awesome things about the moon. And then the period is, and they're lovesick. It's like, ugh. And all of a sudden you're like, what's wrong with the moon? It's lovesick, right? Well, that's also one of the beautiful qualities of the moon. The moon is longing for something. There's something missing in the moon. The feminine side of us is the part that knows something's missing. It knows we're missing something, that we need something to complete us. Okay? That need for completion is what draws us into a relationship in the first place. Even in a man. A man, sure, he's got his biological needs, which means he's full of testosterone. He got to stick it somewhere, right? Men are born to have sex. If they're not having sex with something, they'll find something to have sex with, right? It's historically and sickeningly and saddeningly proven. Men need to have sex, right? It's a biological need. That's a male quality of just having too much testosterone to ensure the survival of the species, right? But then men also, within them something's missing. They know it. Us guys know within us something's missing. It's not like all day long we're just thinking about a woman, a sheep, or a cute guy in prison to have sex with. No. Besides that, men are also feeling something's missing that I need to connect to. That's their female moon side that's lovesick. Something's missing. I'm lovesick. Men are lovesick too. Women are just more lovesick, okay? Until they get older, and then they kind of grow out of that a bit. But when younger women have more estrogen, the moon hormone, which makes them more lovesick, they are more aware that something is missing in their lives. Okay? This quality sets women up for greater spiritual development. Okay? It gives them a foundation for actually more rapid spiritual development than men, if they choose that path. Because the this need, this missing, something's missing, can connect us to something greater than ourselves. It's the female side, the moon side, that has that need to connect to something greater than ourselves. That's what lovesick is. I need to connect to something greater than myself. Me, myself, and I are just not enough. Even with me, myself, and I doing everything I want at every moment, and everything's working out exactly as planned with no stress, as if you had that kind of life, but if you did, there's still something missing. And that's the female side, that's lovesick. There's something missing. I'm not connected to something, and I need to find something to connect to. It's our female side that does that. Human souls are feminine. God is masculine, meaning he's the active principle, it's the active principle, she's the active principle, whatever pronoun you want to use. God is an active principle. And we are receptive principles, which makes us female in relationship to God. All souls are female. So therefore, we are all lovesick and want to connect to something greater than ourselves. The only truly greater thing than ourselves is God. And ultimately, that's what everyone needs to connect to. The sad thing is that women having a greater need to connect to things attempt to find that connection with men. And I don't know, I like to think I'm a pretty good guy. And I know a couple other guys I think are a pretty good guy. But compared to God, that thing all of us looking for, whether male or female, we're like not even worms. We're like just things that are going to ruin women's lives. Men ruin women's lives, is what men do. If women are so lovesick that they think a man, this not even two-legged creature, this three-legged creature, is going to be able to fulfill that lovesickness. Okay? It can't. When you get women with some afflicted moons, they're unable to fulfill that lovesickness by connecting to the life that is God of everything, that gives them that all-knowingness. Instead, they'll direct all that lovesickness towards a man. And then, that man ain't got a chance, does he? I don't care who he is. Unless he's like Krishna, Jesus, or God walking on earth. And even then, it's not going to be enough for that girl, right? So, women, I see them do themselves this all the time, where their whole lives are on hold. Because they don't have a guy in their lives. It's like all these things they can do. All these miraculous qualities. All these talents. All this beauty to create and live life. But they can't. They don't do any of it because they don't have a man in their lives. They're projecting all that lovesickness towards a man. That's an afflicted moon. The moon is lovesick. That doesn't mean it needs a man or a woman. Lovesick is the need to connect to all of life, the life that is God. And the moon gives us all that need. And isn't it a shame to search for all that need in a two- or three-legged creature who's going to die, who's going to disappoint you? Yet that's what people do. And the more afflicted a person's moon, the more stronger the person projects that great need to connect to life and God onto a fallible, defective, useless, when it comes compared to God, person. And I see women do this all the time. I'm always really happy when I'm out there running around the trail or something, and I'm like way out there, out there, maybe in some dangerous spots, and there's a girl, all alone, marching down that trail. I'm like really proud of that girl. I'm like, here's a girl who's out here living life, enjoying the beauty of life, connecting to nature, satisfying her lovesickness with the life of nature and everything she's going to see and experience along that grueling hike. And she's out there all alone. So many women won't do something like that alone. A lot of men don't either. But women do it less rarely. I'm like, that's cool. Here's a girl, she's not waiting for a man to go have her adventures. She's living her adventures. And also, some of the famous books that have come out in recent years have been these books about women who just said, screw it, I'm going to go live the adventure of my life. And then they write their little memoir book, and it's a bestseller. Because that's what women need to do. Women need to embrace the wholeness of life with their good moons, instead of waiting for a man to come along. I mean, all the women who want readings, when am I going to get married? I just have one question. I'm like, let me guess. You want to know when you're going to get married, don't you? It's always that, right? It's always that. It's like, but you have you. What about the whole life you are? You can connect to life through your actions and your creativity. But their moons are a little afflicted, and so they're projecting all that need into a man, into someone who's going to complete them. And then they're going to find a man one day. You know what they're going to be? They're going to be disappointed, right? Because that man will disappoint them. There's no way he can't. So love sickness is a beautiful part of humanity. It's the human spirit, that need to connect to something truly greater than ourselves. But to demote that into a need to connect to another human, to fulfill that huge need, is a demotion of what we're capable of. Every woman who feels, I need a man to complete me, I'm like, what the fuck? You're a woman. What do you need to complete you? I mean, shit, you're a woman. You're like, can do magic in your womb. That's why we call you women, right? You're like this magical thing that's all-knowing, that just walking into a room, you can make half of us smile without even doing anything. And you need a man to complete you? It's like, no, you don't. That's a sad state of mind. Yet so many women, their love sickness is directed towards that. And the man is no better than the woman. He's not going to be worse, but he's no better than her, right? And this love sickness is the need to connect to something greater than us, which is spirit and God. The love sickness is not to connect to something equal to us, another human being. You know what I'm saying? So to direct that love sickness to connect to something greater than ourselves, to be a human being, is like a very demoting thing. It's the woman saying, the best I'm worth, the most happiness I'm worth, is the happiness that a man in my life can provide. I'm like, that's not a lot of happiness, babe. Trust me. It's just really not a whole lot. I think you could be worth a lot more happiness, you know? And the truth is, all of us who have a female side want to connect. And the most natural way to connect is someone of the opposite gender. Or, if we're gay, to someone of the same gender. But to a person. But we're meant to connect to something greater. And we're going to be lovesick, and we're not going to be happy with our partners until we connect to that greater thing. The more afflicted the moons, the more sick the love sickness is, which means the more it wants a person, something in this world, to connect and complete itself, which means the more it sets itself up for misery and disappointment. Because you cannot have a good relationship if you're not connecting to something greater than your spouse. If you're not connecting to something greater than your spouse, and your spouse becomes your greatest connection, you're screwed. Because your spouse is no better than you. So at the end of the day, you don't have any more than you did when you started, right? But if you connect to something greater than yourself, you become greater. That love sickness to connect to something greater than ourselves makes us into a greater person. So by trying to connect to someone equal to us, meaning anyone we're attracted to, doesn't add anything to our lives. Maybe for the first few weeks, maybe even for the first 6 months, but not after that, right? That's why relationships hardly make, after 6 months, they start deteriorating. And after 2 years, they're over. That's the common thing. Because it just doesn't work. That love sickness is to something greater than ourselves. And no person we could ever meet is greater than us, can add something to us that we're not capable of all of ourselves. Only the beauty of life, of all of life, that is God, can do that. Good moons are plugged into that greater thing. They're somehow attuned to that there's a greatness of life around me. And therefore, I can have a good relationship. But not being attuned to that life somehow, you just can't have the great relationship you want to have. It just ain't gonna happen, okay? Because then when you have your perfect relationship, you'll still be lovesick. And you can't be happy if you're in a relationship and lovesick, right? It just won't work. So that's one of the reasons relationships get so hard, because our need to be in one is motivated by that lovesickness to connect to something greater. Unfortunately, a person is not greater than you. They're just equal, right? So you're not getting ahead. At the end of the day, your bank balance of joy and happiness and connection is the same. And not understanding that, people go to extreme lengths to do anything to have love and waste time, waste their life, sit around wasting their money on astrologers, sit around moping around when they're going to fall in love, going to places they don't even like to meet someone who actually look at them, instead of connecting to the beauty of life that's right there in front of them, right here, right now, and living. Okay? So that's a very, very important quality of that. Both men and women do this. Women do it more in their early lives. Men do it more in their latter lives. Okay? Because in latter days, after mid-40s, men's testosterone tends to drop and women's estrogen drops. So their biology is under different influences. As a result, this shifts. Okay? So men get lovesick more when they're old, and women are more lovesick when they're young, which means they have a need to connect to something greater than themselves. But the mistake is thinking the greater thing is another person. Another person is just someone we can share the greater thing with. That's all another person is. They're a person we can share that greater thing with, and by extension connect to that person. But that person is not the greater thing we're trying to connect to. But a lot of people feel like it is and think it is because of afflictions to their female side. Okay? All right, so now you've learned a lot about masculine and feminine energy. The next thing we're going to talk about is how the fact that men are stronger in their masculine energy and women are stronger in their feminine energy creates very different relationship needs and very different behaviors for men and women. When man does something and the woman do the same thing, in the man it can be a sign of health, in a woman it could be a sign of misery. But they're doing the same thing because they come from these different point of views. Now, some men are more masculine, some women are more feminine. Some women are more masculine, some men are more feminine. Okay? We have a different mixture. Not everyone is the same balance in their male and female dynamics in use. We're all different. Okay? But in order to get a female body, a woman has to be at least 50.000001 feminine. Okay? Otherwise, she would have a male body. If she was 49.00000099 feminine, then she'd have a male body. Okay? Same for men. For a man to get a male body, he has to be 50.000001 or more masculine. Okay? If he was 50.000001 feminine or more feminine, he would be born in a female body. Okay? Therefore, men are different than women. But they're not better. Like one of the differences that men have always shoved in women's faces is we're smarter. Women don't have head for politics. Women can't write, you know? Women can sew, they can do music a little bit, but they can't compose great masteries. Only men have that intelligence. So one of the ways women have been disparaged throughout history, the Dark Age history, is not just in their physical ability, which is truly less. I mean, women just can't carry as much as men, right? Like when something needs heavy around here needs to be picked up, it's me, you know? It's not Chastity. No way. So, so men have some stronger physical abilities, in a practical way. But women actually have some stronger abilities in other ways. Like they have better endurance, they have higher pain tolerance. But immediate, practical, all right, you got to get the couch out of the living room, yeah, men are better for that. And of course, so women have been disparaged a little bit for their physical frailty compared to men. But where they've been most disparaged is in their intelligence, actually. And to me, that's the saddest thing about history. Sure, there's lots of bloody wars and shit, but the saddest thing about history is just the fact that women have been disparaged for what can come out of their mouths. Well, I look at it, between listening to an intelligent son, a man, who has all the facts, and listening to a woman who's never left the house and they know what a book is, right? Who has all-knowingness. I'm going to listen to the all-knowing woman every chance I get, right? Because all-knowingness is always better than intelligence. Every single time. All-knowing will beat intelligence. So when you're looking at a chart, no matter how much you study, when you just know to say something and you don't know why you're saying it, by all means do say it. Let your female side make that perfect prediction. Okay? And give your male side a rest. Okay? So, while men and women are different, they're in no way lesser beings. For every strength a man has that a woman doesn't have, the woman has the strength that a man doesn't have the strength. And if that wasn't the case, what would even be the purpose of having a relationship with a member of the opposite sex? If men are smarter, stronger, and even according to some authors, more attractive, then what the hell do I need a woman for, right? We need them because for every strength we have, they have a complementary strength. And for every strength a woman has, a man has a complementary strength. That's the only reason. Okay? So, we're going to learn how men and women are different and that they will behave differently. And you will see men who go to excess femininity in their behavior and lack masculinity in their behavior. And you'll see women who go to excess masculinity in their behavior and lack femininity in behavior, but they're still male and female. The woman's still female. She has the breasts to prove it. I'm sorry. I don't care what you say. If she has boobs, she's female and has certain needs. However much she may deny those needs and lie about them, they're still there. Okay? And men, I don't care how they live their lives and what they behave like, they have certain needs. And if they got a wiener, they have certain needs. And there's no changing that. And there is a difference. But lots of times you'll see people go to extremes where they literally try to fulfill opposing needs. But they're never happy in that because in the end of life, we're meant to fulfill ourselves on a masculine and a feminine level. But men have to fulfill themselves on a masculine level first. Once they've achieved that fulfillment, they can have fulfillment on a lunar level. And women, they need to fulfill their feminine side first. Once their feminine side is fulfilled, they naturally will fulfill their masculine side as an extension of fulfilling their feminine side. So women don't need to be concerned about their masculine side at all. They just have to work on their feminine side. As that gets better and healthier, their masculine side will just naturally bloom out of that. It'll just come out of it without any effort. And the male side, when the men do their masculine things and succeed in their masculine efforts and work on their masculine side, the feminine stuff will just naturally come into their life and they'll develop their feminine sides just by extension. Okay? And so we'll see how that works. But lots of times you get people who try to fulfill the opposite side. You'll get men who are trying to find more happiness and get over their pain by fulfilling their female side first. 20 years later, they're still miserable, useless men. And women who are feeling pain and misery, which means every woman on earth and every man, because we're all suffering down here, who try to fulfill their masculine needs first and ignore their feminine side, and 20 years later, they're just miserable people. Okay, there's miserable women, and who are worse off, and so are the men, because after 20, 30, 40, 50 years of barking up the wrong tree, you're so tapped out and worn out and burnt out that you're worse off than when you actually started. Okay, so it's very important for women to develop their female sides. If a woman's hurting, it's because her feminine side is hurting. So the solution, fix the female side. If a man is hurting, it's because his masculine side is beat up. The solution, fix the masculine side. Why is this important in relationships? Because the way we try to fix our sides is getting someone to validate them, which means we try to get the person that we want to be in love with to validate that. So much of our relationship needs come out of that pain. So much of a man's relationship needs and the errors he'll make come out of the pain of his masculine side. And so much of the woman's relationship needs and the mistakes she makes in her relationships all come out of that hurt female side. Okay? It's nowhere but in relationships do we discover our deepest wounds, which means in a relationship, a woman will discover her deepest wounds to her feminine side. And in a relationship, a man will discover the deepest wounds to his masculine side. So now that they fall in love, you know what that means? It just means they both discovered their deepest wounds, which means they're in a really bad place unless they choose to work on those wounds and heal those wounds as individuals who want to be better people. And then they can have a better relationship. But failing that, their relationship will go down the tubes and the wounds will only get deeper. And then we got sadder people than when we started out. Because nothing is sadder than a failed relationship, right? And oftentimes nothing can be more damaging to our psyches than a failed relationship. A failed relationship can damage the feminine psyche in a woman, and a failed relationship could damage the masculine psyche of a male very, very badly. Okay? So we can't do, you see what I'm saying? We can't start even doing compatibility and seeing how people are going to work together without understanding this whole world of how people are and what our needs are and our masculine sides and feminine sides and how we can hurt and how we can heal. And that's why this pre-compatibility is such a huge part of the compatibility course. It's the bigger part, because without that there's just no point in it all. Okay? So next we're going to talk about differences of men and women due to the fact that the sun is more dominant in a man and the moon is more dominant in the woman. Okay? So thank you.